I've always wanted to bang the gong. We're going to try to get started. All right. I'm sorry so many people here. It was really hard to get organized. There's still people coming in, and we're actually still waiting on two speakers that apparently are stuck in the massive traffic jam that we have caused. Democracy does not always run smoothly. So that's a heads up that there might be a few hiccups. We might have a few speakers, and the order might change a little bit because we are waiting on people, and there's a big crowd outside. But thank you guys so much for coming. This is amazing, looking out from up here and seeing how large this crowd is, knowing that there's an overflow room behind us that is also full, and a line of people that are going to be waiting outside because so many people wanted to come to this. I also want to thank some of our special guests that are here. I don't think he's here yet, and he might not be able to make it, but Congressman Tom Suozzi said he is going to try. I also want to give him a quick shout out, even though he's not here. We approached him at his open house recently, and he willingly signed a single-payer pledge. So what that said, just so you know, is that when the Democrats retake Congress in 2018, he's going to immediately... All right, he has pledged to immediately and personally sponsor a bill for single payer. So we're going to be moving forward on that. It's going to happen. And while we're giving credit where credit is due, there's another announcement I want to make. State Senator Brooks could not be here today, but we found out about an hour ago that he also just signed a pledge for single payer here in New York. Let's give him a big round of applause. I also want to thank Assemblyman Chuck Levine, who came in here. He's a sponsor of that bill here in New York. Thank you. And we'll be hearing from him in a little bit as well. Also, a shout out to other organizations that helped us here and have sent speakers. We're going to have a speaker from the LIPC, the Long Island Progressive Coalition. Give them a big round of applause. And we also have a speaker from Physicians for a National Health Plan. They've been fighting this battle for a long time. I also want to thank the Our Revolution organization. How many of you, raise your hand if you signed up here for on Our Revolution for this event? All right, thank you so much. We were planning this event with Our Revolution. We had about, what? Oh, yeah, thank you. Our Revolution, for those of you who don't know, is a national organization that was created by Bernie Sanders after the primary. Yeah. And Long Island Activists is in the process of becoming an affiliate of that group. That's why you saw this event on there. We were planning it with them. We were trying to fill up the room. We had about 100 sign-ups. Then an email went out from Our Revolution, and suddenly 350 people were signed up for the event. So before we move on with the event, I want to give a quick plug to our organization. You see this giant banner behind me. I want to just let you know what Long Island Activist is and what we do. We'd really like to get you guys involved on a local level. So during the primary, obviously there was a big groundswell movement for Bernie Sanders. That happened on Long Island as well. Months before the campaign actually came to New York, actually about a year before that, we were organizing here, starting in the summer of 2015 when Bernie Sanders had a big live stream event, and I showed up thinking there'd be 10 people in a room, a bunch of crazy progressives, and that there just really weren't that many of us. It turned out there were dozens of events. They were all standing room only, and we began to see that there was a real movement afoot. Without any help from the national campaign, we created an organization that got 75,000 signatures to get him on the ballot in New York. We planned hundreds of events. We were flyering all over the place. And that work that was happening took a candidate from 2% to 47% in the polls, just being done by people out on the streets. After the primary ended, a lot of us were pretty disheartened, but we understood that all of us had gotten together. Most of us had never seen each other or met each other before, and yet here we had put together this great family of people who were very dedicated, and we refused to allow that to just disappear. So we decided we were going to move on and rename ourselves. So Long Island for Bernie Sanders became Long Island Activists, and some of our members who were delegates for Bernie Sanders and people that had been campaigning for 2 years. Where are my Bernie delegates here? Please raise your hand, Bernie delegates. We have a few. We decided we were not going to let all this go to waste. So we created this new organization based on what had been Long Island for Bernie. What we are all about is really what the Bernie campaign was all about, this idea of a political revolution. We all know that something feels wrong in this country. Things are not going the way that we want it to go. We know that public policy in no way reflects public opinion. Something is very, very wrong. So that's what we're really dedicated to doing. Our organization is really based on some core principles that I want to just talk about briefly before we move on. One of the figures that we've based everything on is Martin Luther King, who I think was probably the greatest progressive, maybe the greatest American who ever lived. And, you know, often in school we just learn about the part where he fought for civil rights for African Americans, and obviously that was a huge deal and it was amazing. But the part that our historians, or at least the kind of history that we deliver in school, has forgotten is that he was also fighting for economic justice. He was also fighting for justice in foreign policy. And he was a radical figure, a figure so radical the FBI had a 19,000-page file on him. Right? Now we worship the man, but we pretend like that half of him didn't even exist. So there's one line that Martin Luther King had that I think really sums up what we are all about. So he once said that our only hope today lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit and go out into a sometimes hostile world, declaring eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. And that's what this organization is all about. So if that sounds like you, if that sounds like something you'd like to be part of, please visit our website, longislandactivist.org. Visit us on Facebook. We are a growing organization. We are doing a lot. You can sign up. There's all sorts of informational sheets, and there's tons of events going on. Our mission is to be as grassroots as possible. So for those of you who were part of the Bernie primary, you may have remembered that there was this interactive calendar where you can find events, but you could also become a leader and just create events. We have now recreated that on our website. So if you want to get involved, look on the calendar. There were 44 events this month alone. Right, things are happening. Take a look and get involved. If you think there's something missing, don't complain. Create the event. Become a leader. Make it happen. You are the change you are waiting for, and that's what we're hoping to do on Long Island. Oh, yes. In addition, we've also finally finished the legal paperwork. We are now actually able to collect donations. Up until now, we have been funding this ourselves. Individuals on the steering committee have put in hundreds and hundreds of dollars to pay for venues like this and for materials like this beautiful banner behind us. We would really love for other people to get involved. We're asking for people, if they can, if you want to be involved, a $2.70 a month donation, 1 cup of coffee, right? That's what it takes. If a bunch of people are giving that little bit, we can make a huge difference. If several hundred of us are doing that, there's so much more that we can do. There's really a limit to how much 10 individuals on a steering committee can fund an entire organization. So we'd really like your help with that. If you can, go to our website. There's a spot there to donate. We're not asking for much, but every little bit helps. If you come to our Facebook and you also go onto our website, you'll see that we're also forming committees. We're looking for people to get very involved. If there's a topic that interests you, Healthcare Committee obviously help with this event. There are all sorts of committees. Please find what your passion is. We don't need everybody to do everything, but if everyone does something, we can really create a lot of change. So please find us online. Please donate if you can. More importantly, we need you to show up and become a leader. This is how democracy happens. Nothing's going to get done in this country unless we start taking to the streets, as people have been doing ever since November. So that's been really beautiful to see. All right, enough of the shameless plug. We're going to move on with, with the event now. So there's an old Chinese saying. It's actually a curse, and it says, "May you live in interesting times." There's no doubt we are living in interesting times. I would love to live in a time where things in this country were going so well for people that we didn't have to get up and have rallies like this and show up at events and marching in the streets and things like that. This clearly is not one of those times, and as a student of history, you kind of realize that those times never exist. That the only time positive change has ever happened in this country is when people have gotten organized and have taken to the streets. So, thank you. I don't think there's any doubt that America's in pretty big trouble right now. We seem to be heading back towards the Gilded Age. If you don't know what that looks like, I suggest you crack open your old textbooks, look in your kids' textbooks. It wasn't a good time. 40% of Americans are living at or near poverty. 60% of Americans have less than $1,000 in the bank. That's one broken car away from a major bankruptcy or crisis. Nowhere is this inequality more clear than in healthcare. We live in the richest country in the world, really the richest country in history, and yet we have 20 million people who have no health insurance at all. We have tens of millions of others who have health insurance, but they can't really afford to use it because their copays and deductibles are so high. These are people that are choosing between paying rent and getting a $700 EpiPen. Right? These are people that are choosing between feeding their children or going to the doctor when they're not feeling well. These are unacceptable choices in a country that is this wealthy. Thank you. Now, I'm really glad we have some media here today. It's really great to see. I wish that our media would also report on those issues of poverty and the struggles of working families half as often as they post on what the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones are. We'd have people in the streets every day. The fact is that these are life and death situations. That's why people are out here. It turns out if you try to take away people's health care, they get angry and they show up. Thousands of people die every year for a lack of health insurance. Thousands of people. Right? This is not a joke. This doesn't happen in any other country, but it happens here every single day. There are people that will die because they didn't get their EpiPen. That's going to happen. This is not a game. Right? There are millions of people who rely on things like that every single day, and they don't have access, or if they have access, they can't actually afford it, which means it's no access at all. Now, unfortunately, it seems like we have many members of Congress that are dedicated to the idea that they can make the situation even worse. We are coming at this from a completely different angle. Our position is clear. Healthcare is a human right. And I think we've mentioned Bernie Sanders before, but I want to take a minute and just thank him. Without Bernie Sanders bringing this to our attention again, bringing this back into the national discussion, right, we wouldn't be talking about this today. That phrase, healthcare is a human right, was just not heard in our political discourse until Bernie Sanders decided to challenge the powers that be. One of my favorite moments during the primary was when Bernie Sanders went on Fox News and he did this town hall with Bret Baier. And Bret Baier challenged him on this issue. He said, where do you see that right coming from? What is the basis of healthcare as a human right? So I might have said something like, you know, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You could probably find a way to justify access to medicine in there. Maybe I would have brought up that in 1948, the United States helped write the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which talks about healthcare as a human right. But Bernie's answer was so much better. He just looked at Bret Baier and he said, because she's a human being. Because she's a human being. Now, I don't know about you, but I would really like to live in a country where that answer is enough. A country where we respect the value and the dignity of a human being, that we're not worried about profits when someone is dying and is in need of a doctor or medicine. We can make that country happen. So today we're going to be talking about two different things. We're going to be discussing federally the issue of the ACA and locally how we're going to push single payer right here in New York. Yeah. Now, while no one thinks the ACA was perfect, and I certainly have my complaints about it as well, the ACA did do some really good things that we need to fight for. Right? The ACA allowed young adults, people I think up to 27, to remain on their parents' health care. That is vital. Putting aside for a moment how sad it is that we live in a country that young adults in their 20s who have tons of college debt cannot now rely on the fact that with that degree they can come out and get a decent job with good wages and health care. Putting that aside, we need to fight to keep that no matter what. There are millions of people that have health care now because they can go on their parents' health care until they're 27. The other major thing that it did is it protected people with pre-existing conditions. God forbid a sick person has the audacity to use their health insurance. That's the end of their health insurance. That being said, the ACA did not go as far as many of us would have liked. It certainly didn't make health care a human right. A human right has neither a copay nor a deductible, so there was still work to do. On the federal level, obviously, there's very little that we can do with this Congress. We know the Republicans want to get rid of ACA. They voted to overthrow it 150,000 times. They seem to have nothing to do. Of course, they never had a replacement plan. Now we're learning the details of that, and you're going to hear a little bit about that in a few minutes. But we have to fight to protect that. We need to fight. We need to put pressure on those people, even those who are too cowardly to hold real town halls, like Mr. Zeldin and Mr. King. We invited them here as well, but maybe if we boo loud enough, they can hear us wherever they're hiding. Instead, they decided to do telephone town halls. I'm sure the questions were screened. Absolutely. Let them hear. Boo. It's ridiculous. We need to apply as much pressure as we can. It's been so heartening to see all the different rallies and events that have been going on, people who are showing up and letting their congressmen know that this is unacceptable. We are not going to allow millions of people to lose what little insurance they have. It's not going to happen. We are going to fight back. But that being said, there's actually a lot we can do right here in New York. People often forget that we can act locally. Not everything happens in Congress. There are lots of things that we can do on the local level and here in Albany. And that's one of the big things we're here to talk about today. Single payer is a real possibility here in New York. There is a bill right now in Albany. It has already passed the Assembly last year. It will likely pass the Assembly again this year. The problem is State Senate. We need to let our state senators know that they are going to vote for this, or they are not going to be our state senators for very much longer. Once the speakers are done, the second half of this meeting is going to involve getting you guys into breakout groups by state senate district. That's why we held you guys up for so long with the sign-ups. It's really important that we are acting locally. We need to be mobilizing. It's not just Zeldin and King that need to be protested. We need to put pressure on anybody who is going to do anything that is going to prevent healthcare from being a human right. There's a common expression that the states are the laboratories of democracy. So many of the great things that have happened in this country happened at the state level first, whether it was women's suffrage, whether it was gay marriage, and in this case, we're going to make it single-payer health care. We are going to turn New York into a progressive haven where we are going to show the country what real progressive policy can do to make people's lives better. There have already been signs of this happening. We saw the Fight for 15 win in Albany. We saw paid sick leave win in Albany. Governor Cuomo stood with Bernie Sanders and recently put out a plan for free SUNY tuition for anybody in the state of New York. We're going to be pushing for that, and we're going to push for single payer. We can make this happen. We can show people how it works, and then they're no longer going to be able to go to these lies and propaganda that they like to spout about how it doesn't work. We'll be showing them here every single day. I don't think they heard that in Albany. Maybe a little louder this time. But I'm not going to lie, it's obviously going to be a lot of work. It may take more than a year or two to get this done. So one of the big things that we need to do, and part of what we're going to be planning when we get into the breakout groups, is how we deal with the misinformation that's been put out there by those who basically serve the needs of big pharma and the big insurance companies. They put profit before people, and they are spreading information that discourages people. They don't even want to hear what single payer is because they've been told so many lies about it. So let's talk about some of those lies they've been told. One of their favorite ones is that this is completely pie in the sky. It's unaffordable. It'll cost $100 trillion per person per day. Our deficit will be $1 gazillion in a day. They will say that right in the face of people that know that other countries are doing it and are doing it for far less per person than we are. We know the truth. It's happening right to our border in the north. One of our speakers today is going to talk about her experience in Canada with single payer so we can see what it really is all about. They'll also tell us, we don't want to change our system. It's the best system in the world. Anything we do will make it worse. Well, the World Health Organization says it's number 32 in the world, and that almost everyone that's in front of us is a single-payer system. So we know that to be a lie as well. Lower costs and better outcomes. Another one of their favorite lines is they'll be rationing. Now, yeah, so that's a really interesting point, as if 20 million people without any insurance at all isn't rationing. As if people having insurance and not being able to afford to use it isn't a form of rationing. As if your insurance company rejecting your claim because it's going to cost too much isn't rationing. That sounds a hell of a lot like rationing to me. At a recent debate, Ted Cruz, I hesitate to take a line from Mr. Trump, but Lion Ted lied quite a bit about single payer the other day during a debate with Bernie Sanders, where he said thousands of Canadians are crossing the border to the U.S. every year so they can have their procedures. It's true, it's thousands out of 35 million. That makes up roughly 1/2%. Somehow that's a convincing piece of evidence. Imagine what would happen if Canada would open up their system to us and said, come to Canada, we'll let you use our single-payer system, it's free. So many people would flood the border, Canada would be building a wall and making America pay for it. There's no denying the facts anymore. The question is, can we make a message that actually wins? Can we overcome the propaganda and the lies? Yes, we can. But we are fighting against a system that is basically a pay-for-play system where they've legalized bribery, and the health insurance companies and big pharma are buying up legislation. So we're going to have to fight back hard. Are you ready to join with us here in New York and show what we can do? Great. So we're going to start inviting some of the speakers up here. Our first speaker, well, first I'm going to check to see it because I haven't seen him walk in and he was a maybe. Is Congressman Swazi here? Does anyone see, is Mr. Swazi? No. All right. He was very busy. He said he was going to try to make it. Maybe he'll show up later and we can squeeze him in at the end. All right, so one of our other speakers is Doreen DiLeonardo.